want to share the basic concept entitled Wisdom is the Principal Thing. Wisdom is the principal thing. In Proverbs, the 4th chapter, verse 7 and 9, you can follow along either on your Bible or we happen to have the notes here. And those of you who are watching via videotape, if you want to get a copy of the notes, what you can do is write us at Alvin at dralvin.com. Alvin at dralvin.com. Or you can call our office at 301-459-2461. 301-459-2461 to get a copy of the notes, as well as you can get a copy of the videotape or the CD of this particular lesson. Today's lesson is Wisdom is the Principal Thing. It says, wisdom is the principal thing in Proverbs 4, verse 7. Therefore get wisdom. Wisdom is the principal thing. So when it says that wisdom is the principal thing, it's saying it's the highest thing, it's the best thing, it's the most important thing. Also, it's interesting, it uses the word principal, Principal, which is more of a financial situation. There is nowhere in the world that you can have wisdom without any resources or financial blessing, because it could have used the word PLE, which is a law. It's still a principle, but it's saying here that wisdom has value. Wisdom benefits you. Wisdom will do something for you that other things won't do for you. One of the most important things we need to understand, there's a difference between wisdom and education or information. Information is the accumulation of facts, but wisdom is the ability to take those facts and information to cause increase, to cause a benefit, to cause a profit, to cause you to be better. It causes your life to have the sun to come out. There will be one of the lessons we're going to be doing in upcoming weeks entitled The Rainy Brain versus the Sunny Brain. I'm not sure if any of you ever felt this way. I don't want you to raise your hand if you do, but some people, when it rains or when it's cloudy, they're unhappy. And when the sun comes out, they're happy. So what they're doing, they're letting the weather determine whether or not they're happy or not. But I don't know if you grew up in a household that every day is a good day. But if you have a rainy brain, when the cloud is out, when there's challenges, when there's problems, when there's circumstances, it begins to affect your mentality. A lot of people get depressed. It's always interesting when I call people from across the pond in England. It's mostly gray in England. If you've ever been, if you haven't, one of the things you need to understand, it mostly is fog and it's mostly gray. So a lot of persons over there have that feeling. Sometimes I talk to my daughter, Alicia, in Chicago, and because her being there in Chicago toward the water, the clouds are quite often there, and many times it is cloudy and gray. A lot of people are affected by the weather, but I'm believing that none of you are going to be affected by that. So there are 3 benefits, as we outlined here on the sheet of paper, concerning wisdom: discernment, balance, and fitness. Discernment and balance and fitness. Everything has a different value. Everything should be treated the same. Over there on the table, we don't have it today, but the other day we had apples is different from bananas. Bananas are different from oranges. All those different things there have a different characteristic and personality. What a husband does with his wife is not the same thing he does with his neighbor. Hopefully not the same thing. But too often some people cannot discern and distinguish. You don't do the same thing with another neighbor's wife that you do with your particular wife. Now you notice there I use 3 benefits of wisdom: discernment, fitness, and balance. Discernment, fitness, as well as balance. Most things in life comes in 3s. Unfortunately, a lot of times when I hear people talk about 3s, they usually talk about somebody dying. It says when somebody dies, it dies in 3s. But let me give you another illustration. I remember one time last week, if you remember, we had a guest speaker via the telephone. His name was James L. Giles, prophet from Charlotte, North Carolina, Queen City, and I appreciate you being here for that particular lesson. I asked him one time when I was decided to go get me a petite filet mignon. I'm not sure what kind of steak you like, but if I'm going to get a steak, I like to get the best part of it, and the filet mignon is a good part of the steak. But right now, since I'm in a weight loss program, I try to make sure I only get maybe 6, 7. I just want the taste of it, but I'm not out to try to prove any record by knocking down 32 ounces of a particular steak. But there is an expression he said to me when I was telling him, I said, Prophet, what I need to do to make this steak sing? He says, what is your Trinity? I said, what do you mean by Trinity? He says, every time you cook something, you have to have a Trinity. I said, what do you mean by that? He said, what are the 3 main ingredients you're going to have in order to make this steak do what it do? I said, give me an example. He says, a lot of times I use onions, garlic, and portobello mushrooms. That's the Trinity. It comes in threes. And so, for example, so what I decided to do is when I made this particular steak, that's what I did. I chopped up some onions, I got me some fresh garlic, and I got me some portobello mushrooms. That is my Trinity. Most of the time, if you come by and if I make you a meal, like for example, the other day I made some shrimp. When I make my shrimp, my Trinity is garlic, it is sweet onions, and what's the other one? Portobello mushrooms. Now, you can use any three combinations. You could have green peppers, could be what you want. You could have red onions. But the thing about it is most people start out with that. Now, it doesn't mean that you don't and cannot add more. I add other things. I add a little wine. I add some butter, some other things to it. But the bottom line is that is the basis. When we say wisdom here at the Even Place, we're saying discernment, fitness, and balance. The name of the organization is the Even Place. My foot standeth in an even place. In the congregation, I will bless the Lord. We are going to be in various situations in our life. And what we want you to do, in no matter the situation, no matter the circumstance, is to be able to have your composure, balance, to be able to not buckle because light builders do, or buckle because you have a financial challenge, or buckle because your children or your spouse or your husband. Don't buckle because of the fact that perhaps you lost your job, whatever the case may be. No matter the circumstance, no matter where you're finding yourself, we want you to be able to have discernment, balance, as well as fitness. Besides having the Bible as one of our textbooks, one of the books that we will be using from time to time is called Dr. Alvin's Book of Ponderations. It's being printed right now. Hopefully, any day now we'll have copies of that for you. And so many times I will be quoting from that particular book. You say, why should I quote from that? I believe that what we're going to be doing here at the Even Place is we're going to give you a course curriculum. Everything's outlined. All the guest speakers, everyone who's going to be here, the music. We have a very, very timely program because we believe that things should be learned line upon line, here a little and there a little. Also, we believe in repetition. In other words, you learn things by doing it over and over again. I mentioned real briefly, I'm in a weight loss program. I have a goal to lose over 100 pounds. Thank God I've lost so far 46 pounds. So I have a regimen that every week I have to lose 2 pounds a week. So every morning, I didn't do it quite as of yet, but every morning I do a weigh-in. Just like you see the fighters do a weigh-in, I do a weigh-in. When I do a weigh-in, I determine whether or not I'm going to have 1 smoothie today, or 2 smoothies today, or 3 smoothies today, or I may have to go on a fast. Not spiritually speaking, but I may have eaten too much the night before. But my goal is to be able to each and every day, I can measure that. I know how many calories I need to do. My goal every day is to have 8 hours of sleep, 8 glasses of water, and do 8 miles. Whether it's walking, whether it's lifting books, whether it's pacing around the block, or whether it's getting on my bike. 24 hours, 8 hours of sleep, 8 hours of water, 8 glasses of water, or 8 miles. If I do that, I knock off the weight. And so also to help me do that, I have to answer the people. Every Tuesday, I talk to my nutritionist, and she asks me how I'm coming. I got to submit to her my journal to make sure it's on par. Her name is the Juice Lady. She happens to be the nutritionist for George Foreman. So every Tuesday, I do a weigh-in at 12 noon, and I got to let her know how I'm coming along. Then on every Thursday, I talk to my personal trainer because, again, I want to be able to have things I can measure, okay? And so what happens every Thursday, I end up talking to my personal trainer, and I have to do the exact same thing. Now, I'm not saying that she don't trust me, but for some reason, she always asks for pictures. I don't know why. She doesn't just take my word for it, but I have to submit pictures along with my journal to keep sure and make sure that I'm rolling there. But anyway, wisdom is the principal thing. Wisdom is the main thing. It's the most important thing. Also, it's very important to have a trinity. I mentioned what we did in terms of something to eat. Now, I want you to look at what on the sheet of paper here. Wisdom airs on the highest frequency. Genius is to tune it in. There's a high road or there's a low road. There's a best practices and there's a low practices. Right here on the sheet of paper, you see there in the book of Isaiah, the 55th chapter, in verse number 1. It says, everyone that thirsteth, come ye to the waters, and he that has no money, come ye buy, eat, yes, come buy wine and milk without money and without price. So it says here, you can live in recessionary times. Because it says here, if you're thirsty, come to the waters. If you have no money, buy. How can you buy? How can you be thirsty and go to waters? How can you have wine and money? Wine and money symbolizes wealth, prosperity, resources. If you don't have any money and you don't have none in your pocket, how can you do that? You got a light bill due, telephone disconnect, waiting for your next day check, tell you what you ought to do. I'm going to give you the principle right here of what you need to do. Now, go down a little bit further since we're running out of time here. Verse number 8 says, for my thoughts are not your thoughts. Okay? So obviously, if I'm experiencing lack, if I'm experiencing no money, if I don't have any resources, I don't necessarily need to change the job. I don't necessarily need to change my husband, change my wife. That may be the case, but that's a whole other subject for another lesson. But the thing here says here, you got to change your thinking. You got to change your thinking. And so it's very, very important for us to understand that we have to begin to understand that lack is not based upon circumstance. Lack is based upon how you think, because it says here, the Lord would not have said you can have something and then not mean it. He said, well, you can have it if you change the way you think. I want us to look at a couple of things on page number 2 of your notes here. I use this acronym HOME, H-O-M-E, 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 HOME. And the reason why I'm looking at this particular word here is I'm using acronym Heart of the Elder, Heart of your Elder. So I noticed that for me, most of the things that I ever learned in my life, I learned by being in a particular setting or home. I want you to think about right now, your success or failure many times is determined by the types of individuals you are around. Think about who you are close to. Who do you confide into? Who do you get your information from? Psalm chapter 1, verse 1 through 6 says, blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of the sinners, nor sit in the seat of the scornful, but is delight in the law of the Lord, and the law does he meditate day and night. And he shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water that bringeth forth fruit in this season. His leaf shall not wither, and whatsoever he does, he shall prosper. He shall prosper. So it lets us know clearly here that where you walk, where you stand, or where you sit determine your success or your failure. Where you walk, where you stand, or where you sit determines your success or failure. I've noticed over the years that a lot of the information that I got in life, I got from home. And I got a lot of wisdom from two extraordinary individuals. The individuals I got them from was Deacon John Wesley Jones, as well as Mary Florrie Jones. And what I listed here, and we don't have time to go through all of them right now, because I know my time is getting kind of tight right now. But I noticed that a lot of things that I learned from my home. The notes that we're sharing from is on your desk there. It's on a sheet of paper here called Wisdom is the Principal Thing. Wisdom is the principal thing. I remember a lot of things that I learned from my father at home. I hear a lot of people talk about the fact that one of the greatest speeches on race was done by our wonderful President Barack Obama. It was a good speech on race. But my father gave me probably the best and the shortest speech on race that I've ever heard in my life. My father used to say to us several simple words when he dealt with the race issue, because we grew up back in the 50s and the early 60s. And during that particular time, many times I didn't realize we would ride from D.C. to South Carolina. We didn't stop. Now, after I'm old, I realize why we didn't stop, why we didn't go into restaurants or restrooms we did on the side of the road. And one of my father's favorite expressions was this: watch out for Charlie. Okay, that was his whole speech on race. Watch out for Charlie. And he didn't explain anything. He didn't say anything more than that. He just said that one thing: watch out for Charlie. I remember when I was 13 years of age, I went to my father, and what I want you to begin to do is I'm doing this. Think about, where do you get your information? Where do you learn? And as you think about it, write those things down on sheet of paper now or later on, because those places are the places that are influencing you. If you believe that when you get a certain age you should retire, or you're going to get old or sick, it's because you heard it and you believed it. There's certain things I do today as a result of what my father taught me. My father taught us to be on time. My father taught me various different things. I do it because I learned it from him. Another thing that happened to me, I'm just going to give this one story, then we're going to have to bring this on in, was on maybe two. I remember when I was 13 years of age, I went to my father, I don't know if you ever did this, and I went to my father and asked my father for some money. And for some strange reason, my father didn't want to give me some money. And I was very upset with my father. Now, back in those days, and even to this day, you didn't raise your voice to your father, nor did you speak back to your father. But when my father told me he was not going to give me the money, I was not in particularly too happy. But what happened as a result of that, I said to my father, I said, in my mind, I wouldn't say it to my father because I was thinking this. You don't say this to your father back in the day, but I was thinking, forget you, okay? Now, after I said to my father, forget you, what I realized was I needed his help. So I asked my father to do this. Take me to the top of Connecticut Avenue. And what I want you to do, when I get to the top of Connecticut Avenue, I'm going to walk from the top of Connecticut Avenue to the bottom of Connecticut Avenue, and I'm not going to stop until I find me a job. And so what I did, I walked down Connecticut Avenue, past the zoo, past the Washington Hilton, and back in those days, there was a place called Bob's Big Boy. Have you ever ate at Bob's Big Boy? Okay. I went in there, and I was not going to go home until I found me some money, because I said, I'll never ask that man another time for money. And since I've been the age of 13, I haven't always been good about it, but I've been trying to get my own money since the age of 13. That's what I learned from my father. So 5 years later, I wanted to go to college. I wanted to go to American University. I go to my father, I said, Dad. He said, what? I said, Dad. I said, what? I said, Dad. I said, what? He said, Dad. I said, what? I said, Dad, I want to go to college. He said, good. God bless you. I said, Dad, I want to go to college. I said, what? I said, Dad, I want to go to college. I said, Dad, I want to go to college. He said, what? I said, Dad, I want to go to college. He says, I said, what? He said, God bless you. I asked him the next time. I said, Dad, I want to go to college. Dad, I want to go to college. I said, Dad, I want to go to college. You going to help me out? He says, God bless you. That was my first lesson in college. If you want to go to college, you got to pay for it yourself. So I got mad at my father, and what I decided to do, I wrote a letter to American University and said, my father ain't got no money, and so I need to go to school. Can you help a brother out? I got a letter back from the school, and they gave me a 4-year scholarship. But I didn't learn my first college lesson until my father said, God bless you. There were many times in my life I didn't understand things that he said. I didn't understand until later on. My grandmother had this expression whenever she was around you. Once you met you, she would always say to you this, son, daughter, keep your business to yourself. When I think about business, I think about my Aunt Ethel. My Aunt Ethel, every room in her house made money. I never, you know, a lot of people talk about being a single parent. If she had this space right here, this is enough space for 4 bedrooms, because she would cut it up, and there'll be somebody there. You go upstairs, you walking down the hall, you knock on the door, there'll be men and women coming out of all the different rooms. Every room would have somebody sleeping in that room because she made money. She had a cab business. She had a grocery store. In her dining room, she had a nursery. She would sell those flowers that were in the nursery to make money. She had a garden in the back. I never saw my Aunt Ethel, quote unquote, the single parent, ever lacking, because she epitomized that song you do for money, the hustle. I want to do a business book on my Aunt Ethel because she did not miss a meal in everything she did. She was always happy. She never, you ask a question about her divorce or her being a single, she never would say nothing. She would never badmouth nobody. She just kept on working. And every time I see her, she was busy. Many times when I go over her house, because many times I had to stay over her house, she would have food, and a lot of times the food had been in that freezer for several months. I didn't know it, but she would always offer us food to take care of us. There are places, and I want you to think about, and we're going to bring this to a close, places where you learn things. And I want to encourage you to begin to look at those places. Those places that you learn things from are either going to elevate you or they take you down. On this sheet of paper, I'm going to give you stories we're going to talk about in the future. When I wanted to go to grad school, I ended up living in the house of the basement of my dean. And because of me sitting at his table and getting to know my dean said, Alvin, you're a good young man. He took me across the street to NBC, and NBC gave me a full scholarship for my master's program. I can tell you story after story where I learned from being in someone's home. That's why we're starting to even place in the home, because I believe home is the heart of your elder or my elder. Heart of my elders. And there are people right now, you're acting out. People are speaking to you right now. Things you do or don't do cause you to go up or cause you to go down. It's based upon the people that you've been around. And so we're going to be talking more and more about that. At the end of this lesson on page number 4, I got a question for you. When we come back at 9:30, I want to get your answer on this. I'm asking a question for you. It's a riddle that I made up. Hopefully, It's a decent riddle, but I made one up. Who is wiser, the unschooled parent who sent his child to school or the child who succeeded in school? Who is wiser, the unschooled parent who sent his child to school or the child who succeeded in school? Was it the parent? Was it the child? Or was it both? I like to find out what you think. There's not necessarily a right or wrong answer, but I like to get your opinion at the end. Who is wise? Was it the parent who was unschooled? Let me give you an example to think about this. I don't know if you've seen the story about Dr. Ben Carson. You know Dr. Ben Carson, neurosurgeon. He's been on our program. You go to dralvin.com to see that particular interview I did with him. His mother was unschooled. She couldn't do a lot of things concerning his education, but she was smart enough to send him to school. And as a result of that, we now have one of the greatest neurosurgeons that ever lived. Who was smarter, the mother who sent him to school or the son who learned from the school, or both? I'd like to get your thoughts about that philosophical question, thinking man's question, thinking woman's question, and I'd like to get your opinion about that. If you'd like to get a copy of today's lesson, Wisdom is the Principal Thing, what you can do is email me at alvin@dralvin.com, or you can write me or call me at 301-459-2461. God bless you. Thank you very much.